Chris, well, a very warm welcome here to learn with us on the first day, and you're the first real speaker, so can you feel the pressure?
Just a little bit now that you say it. Thank you for having me.
You got to set the trains now. No pressure.
Chris, the first time I met you was actually in Denmark, I think 1.5 years ago, actually ahead of the COVID-19, obviously. And I was pretty amazed. First of all, you're a very sleek guy, but you're also you know your shit, right? And you have been working with the EFI for some time. Can you introduce yourself a little bit?
Yeah, my name is Chris Showalter. First of all, thank you for the compliment, but obviously I have a lot of COVID hair going on at the moment, so I'm very desperate for getting it cut. Chris
I got one yesterday. I can tell you can see that.
Global sales director for what we call Fiery Display Graphics, meaning all the Fiery products that we offer into the display graphics space. So the main product line is Fiery XF. So the inkjet RIP, but then it's also Fiery Job Flow. So we're talking pre-press automation. And I think that was a session or a presentation around automation I did up there in Denmark. We're also talking EFI IQ, which is our cloud offering that monitors our solutions. I'm fairly new to the sales role, so I'm still in the defensive role. I keep always saying, but I actually know what I'm saying because I did for 10 years. I did product management, so I know the product reasonably well.
And I can tell you that in the session we had before this, Gene and I were talking about all the good things to hear in this week. And I don't know if you know Gene, but Gene is a consultant in the inkjet space. So I obviously asked her, so if she knew about EFI, and of course she did. So so it's not a big surprise, of course, but I was just wondering, with EFI's role in all literally all the segments of the industry. Are you still growing, or have you saturated the market so far, or how does it look from your perspective?
Well, I probably need to give a pre-COVID answer and then a COVID answer, right?
You're welcome.
like everyone, obviously, COVID is a challenge for us as well. It very much depends on the market segment. I mean, we are obviously a big player in the display graphics space. We have a lot of customers that are doing print for trade shows. Obviously, the customers struggle, and if the customers struggle, we struggle with them. We are very vested in textile. Fashion is struggling. Obviously, we are in the boat with our customers here. But we are very much a differentiated company, right? We have 3 different business units, and within the business units, we have a lot of different product lines. So we're quite lucky that we're weathering the storm very, very well. And it didn't grow through COVID, but we grew before, and we will grow after.
I think that a lot of people obviously know, because EFI is such a massive part of almost any printing equipment you buy today. But you are so much more than, I mean, I know that you work with the Fiery things, but I mean, just to give people an understanding, because you are everything from MIS systems to variable data to pretty much the entire. Can you just give a very, very brief overview of what you're not doing?
what you're not doing might be easier, right? So, we're trying to do the full ecosystem. So I guess to the answer, what we're not doing post-print. We're not folding, stapling, cutting. We're not doing that, but we're integrating to that. 3 business units. First business unit, enhanced productivity software. So here we're talking MIS systems, web to print. So basically, how do I get my print order in, and how does it, travel through the organization? Business unit number 2, the Fiery business unit. So those are the digital front ends that drive toner-based systems like an iGen, Konica Minolta, Ricoh, etc. But also Fiery XF that's driving inkjet equipment, and we're talking over 800 different inkjet devices. So we're talking, the Vutex, the Canons, the Mimakis, this kind of stuff. But we're also talking our single pass technology, ours and others, right? So our Nozomi, Bolt, Landa, so very versatile. And then I already mentioned some of them, right? Third business unit is the inkjet business unit. So now we're talking hardware, in display graphics, but also textile, so garment, technical textile, etc. Building materials, so ceramics, concrete, all that fun stuff.
If from your perspective, if we look specifically on the Fiery that you work with, how difficult is it to be innovative in this segment? I'm asking because I'm a little bit curious about. I think that a lot of people think, okay, we have this computer, put it in front of the machine, and then that take care of the work. How much more innovative can you be in that? I know it's a kind of stupid question, but it's actually an honest question, because I was just thinking that I consider EFI as a very innovative company. But if you ask me where you're innovative, I would have difficulties pointing at this is where you are. And this is, can you elaborate a little bit on that one, if you don't think it's too stupid a question?
No, very, very good. And there's no stupid question. There's only stupid answers, right? It's a very good question. It's a different one that I usually get, so I like that. I'm not prepared for this question, but I think it's actually not difficult for us to be innovative. I think it's difficult for us to do a prioritization. Why is it not difficult for us is, first of all, we write a lot of our core technology ourselves, and I have a couple of slides on that as well. So we own the color engine, therefore we can do everything, right? And then since we're spread so wide, we get pushed into those segments, right? So in my case, with the Fiery XF that's driving the inkjet equipment, what, like 9 years ago, we purchased the ceramics, the Creta printer. So, hey, Chris, go off and build something for ceramics. And guess what? They don't have process colors, so you have to figure out how to do ink savings without process colors. Guess what? They have a 500-meter kiln, which changes color because of the heat curve it does, right? And then we acquired Reggiani, and off we go into a textile. And now suddenly we have to sew test charts into a long, process, and that requires us to change, things with how we linearize or calibrate. So there's a lot of natural innovation just by, entering those new segments, taking them serious, doing the market research, and then being able, to just do it because we own all the technology ourselves. And then you can bring that into other segments. Right?
And then lead me to maybe another question that is not so common. And I'm just wondering, because again, from a cost perspective on Fiery, I see this box. I know that I have nice screens where I can do a lot of nice things too. But, to do the actual, for example, if you look at a commercial printer where you have like a toner-based equipment where you have the ripping process. I think that when I used to work for Xerox many years ago, I think it was always like, okay, you had the job, you posted it, it took an awful lot of time before it was ready, and then it was ready to print. But the processes and the operating systems that you don't control, they develop a lot as long. So does your development just follow with that, Moore's law and faster and more RAM and more memory and more space and hard drive, thing like that? Or is that also giving you new opportunities to do things smarter?
There's opportunities there as well. I don't know if everyone knows, but on the toner side, so the cut sheet side of things, like you mentioned, Xerox, we try to love all our OEMs equally. But we have actually hardware screening, meaning we have a video board on the Fiery. We have a chip which we develop ourselves, which has the screening burned on the chip. That means a lot of investment up front, but once you have it, obviously it becomes super fast and very cost effective for us. That's a benefit just of scale, just pure size of the company. But when we do that, we work so close with the hardware manufacturer that we can actually do some things that are very innovative, etc. For example, adjust specifically for Xerox, adjust the resolution based on where the pixel actually falls on the drum, so we can do some advanced sharpening that we were able to only develop because we are so close to the OEM, and we have this hardware chip where we can utilize that.
So to put it short, basically means that EFI is a core technology developer and basically bring commodity to the market because of the size, but you do core developments in order to make sure that you can remain a leadership role in that segment. Could that be like?
Man, you're hired. Absolutely.
Thank you very much. When should I start? No, I don't have time for it. Sorry. Jean, do you have any questions to Chris now, or should we take in the QA afterwards? I think Chris is
Q&A after. Yeah, I'm dying to see what he's going to show us, and I've kind of got a list of things, but hopefully you'll answer them when he runs through them. If not, afterwards.
Perfect. Take it away, Chris. We will turn off our sound and camera, but we're here all the time. So if you have any issues, you just let us know. Okay.
Perfect. So first of all, yeah, I think everyone can see my my screen. So let me just. All right. I already introduced myself, so we might as well start. Here we go. So I want to take some time today to talk with you about what we call the unified print room. In order to do that, I will first give you a little bit of introduction of Fiery XF and what are the top 10 reasons. Obviously, I have way more than 10, but I want to watch the time as well. Once I'm through that, I will explain to you what the unified print room is and what the benefit is. And once we're through that, I'm just a color nerd by trade, so I have to talk a little bit about color, and that goes back to what we just discussed, that we have the color technology ourselves, and we play in so many different segments, so we can innovate and we can bring those innovations back into other segments as well. And then obviously we do a Q&A, which is probably going to be the most interesting part. So we have different Fiery offerings. I will specifically talk today about Fiery XF. Fiery XF is EFI's software digital front end for wide to super wide inkjet printing. So basically it's the RIP. We like to call it color management workflow because it can do significantly more than just ripping the file, and I will tell you a couple of things what it's doing. It's hard for me to limit myself to the top 10, but I will try, and then we also have the Q&A where we can go even further. My top reason, so number one, is what we call a fast rip. And that's, again, a great innovation story. This is something that we actually brought over from the toner side of the house. It's exclusive software technology that no one else in the industry has. FAST, or fast rip, stands for Fiery Accelerated System Technology. But what is it actually doing? Most rip vendors license the Adobe APP, the Adobe PDF print engine. Why? Because they're a market leader, and it's crucial that you ensure file integrity, meaning that the file that you see in an Adobe product where you create the PDF should look the same as the final printout. Actually, the other way around. The printout should look the same as the file in the Adobe technology. So if you license from Adobe, you can be fairly sure that's happening. We, as Adobe's biggest customer, we're actually the only one that basically get the source code of the APP open. Sure, it's more complicated than that, but that's the way how I understand it. And then we can replace parts of that code. So basically, when you choose the faster, you can use regular APP, but if you choose the faster, the PDF will come in, the file interpretation, so where the fonts go, what fonts, overprints, transparency, all that fun stuff is done with the original Adobe code, because again, file integrity is key. But then the actual rendering, so the shooting of pixels, so cyan, 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 etc., this is done with our own code, and obviously that's one of the fastest codes in the industry. So this makes this so much faster than what anyone else can do. So again, we're the only one that can do this, so it's exclusive to us. It's called the EFI Fast Rip, and it makes us an average 5 times up to 10 times faster than a competitive solution on the exact same hardware. Does performance like this matter? I mean, especially in inkjet, if you have your production under control, you pre-rip, right? So the rip performance is actually not that big a deal. But I believe it actually matters big time because last-minute changes are a reality and they happen. And whenever you do a last-minute change, the printer will sit idle and wait for the rip. And that's pure profit, especially when we're talking super wide equipment where the rip is required to pre-rip the full page before you can even start printing. So performance is actually a really big differentiation. Number two, and there's actually multiple slides on this because you can look at this in different ways. This is Fiery Command Workstation. When we changed from Fiery XF 6 to Fiery XF 7, we actually threw away our user interface and we replaced it with what we call Fiery Command Workstation. It does not mean this is a new development because Fiery Command Workstation is actually around since quite a long time. Fiery Command Workstation is the user interface or the client that is driving any Fiery on the market. And now we have access to this as well. We have 250,000 users, making this a very powerful, well-used, well-tested, very stable application. It's native Mac and native Windows. It's very easy to use, very intuitive to use. And this allows us to be part of what we call the unified print room. and obviously have a couple of more slides on this. The unified print room means that I have one command workstation that's driving any Fiery, meaning we're the only product that can give you, or the only company that can give you a product that drives toner, cut sheet, single pass inkjet, shuttle-based inkjet, proofing devices, label devices, all from one user interface, giving you a reduced learning curve, significantly better cross-operator training, same quality consistency from one product to another. Best-in-class color, I mentioned that before. We own 100% of our color technology. So we're not licensing from another vendor like what most other RIP vendors do. And the vendors that are providing color technology today, they're excellent, right? I have very high respect for them. But we are excellent as well. In addition to that, we do color really, really well. It also means that we can change it and adjust it whenever we want because we own all the technology, we own all the code, right? That allows us to be more reactive to the market requirements. If a print has problems in the field, we can change whatever we need to change in order to make the machine perform. Also, don't forget, we are a machine manufacturer as well, so we always have a very, very high interest to be very reactive in the field and ensure that the machines perform to the best possible way. Also, it gives us the possibility to provide innovation. So we can bring new technologies that we either develop for a market or that we develop for another market and want to bring into another market. And we can bring that fairly quickly to the market. Some examples are Fiery Edge, Ink Saving, Intensify, but I have a dedicated slide on that. We are cross-application. We touched on that as well. So we're probably the only RIP vendor that plays into proofing. That's where our history is. Sign and display, ceramics, building material, textile, toner, cut sheet, single pass inkjet for packaging, for production, packaging prototyping, fine art printing, etc., etc., etc. So a very wide breadth of applications, meaning, again, we can bring a lot of innovation back to the main product line, but also meaning that it's very easy to jump to one into another and have the same quality and same user interface to address it. Very flexible from a workflow standpoint. Of course, we can place or start a manual job. Of course, we have a virtual printer, so you can actually directly print out of Photoshop, Illustrator, maybe even Word or PowerPoint. You can directly print to the Fiery. Of course, we can automate via hot folders. Of course, we can automate via JDF, either in our own workflow solutions or with a third-party workflow providing the JDF to us. So very flexible and very scalable solution. Centralized job management, again, Fiery Command Workstation being that one client where you can connect multiple Fiery XF to. Actually, each Fiery XF server can have multiple printers connected. But not only can you connect Fiery XF servers, you can also connect Fiery servers off Xerox, Konica Minolta, Ricoh, etc., or in single pass machine. I mentioned before, we can be nicely automated via JDF. This works beautiful with third-party workflows, but obviously with our own workflows, so our MIS solutions or our web-to-print solutions, it works, well, let's say even better or seamless or pre-tested, pre-installed, however you want to call it. This makes us, as Fiery XF, the central hub of the EFI ecosystem. I think it's always very important that you don't have to purchase or invest in the full ecosystem right away. Each piece obviously works on its own, but then you can add pieces as you see them fit. We can orchestrate a fully automated workflow where from a web-to-print solution, an MIS ticket is created, the job is handed over to Fiery XF, it's printed on the machine, data like ink usage, media usage is provided back to Fiery XF, fed back upstream to the MIS system so the post-calculation can happen, all fully automated and JDF driven. Business savvy, you mean probably a couple of things with that. First of all, we're an affordable solution, but we are the lowest, or even more so, we have the lowest total cost of ownership, the lowest TCO in the market. Why? Because our maintenance offering is just very, very affordable. For 500 euros or 600 US dollars, we can cover no matter what configuration you have on your Fiery server. So it does not matter how many printers you have, doesn't matter how many options you have. No additional cost at $600 flat rate. This covers phone support, email support, WebEx, etc., but also all updates and upgrades. So very, very affordable. Also, please don't forget our user interface, Fiery Command Workstation, is free of charge, so you can install that as often as you want. Then the solution can grow with you because you can add options later without any penalty. Learning is key. I think this is crucial. This is very often overlooked. Learning.efi.com. We have probably the biggest industry education platform, and we have a lot of content when it comes to Fiery XF and all other Fiery products, of course. We have as much content online as we had previously in a 4 to 5 day on-site training class. It's very interactive. A colleague of mine, John Nate, very similar to me, he's actually in front of the slides, in front of the product, and he walks you through. And don't be afraid, it's not 4 days of continuous video. It's split up in a lot of small videos by subject. So if you only want to know how to iterate spot colors, or if you want to know how to create a cut path, etc., you just search for that particular video and you can learn. We offer 2 levels of certification. A small fee applies for the certification. We have a Fiery XF Professional certification and a Fiery XF Expert certification. This is covering all that content that I just mentioned, plus in fairly difficult online test. The second level even requires you to do a couple of prints and send them in. This ensures a really nice level of learning and comprehension. This means that you can cross-train operators better, that you can move them better from one machine to the other, and obviously it's easier to hire people as well. And especially nowadays with the COVID situation that we have to live through, having an online platform is obviously priceless. So finally, talk about the unified print room. I already mentioned it a little bit, but I want to go in detail because I think it's a rather big deal. This is how, end of the day, a unified print room could or should look like, right? We have Fiery Command Workstation right in the center here, being installed in this case on a Mac, but again, it's a native Mac and Windows client. You could actually have multiple Command Workstations installed, as many as you want to. And with Fiery Command Workstation, you can now control any Fiery-driven device. So this could be with Fiery XF and ViewTech, but an Epson, Muto, Mimaki, etc. This could be toner devices, as you can see them here on the left and right top, or it could be a single-pass inkjet like our Nozomi or Landa printer. But how does this actually look like? So here you can see a screenshot of Fiery Command Workstation. And you can see it's a very simple user interface. It's all just about job priorities and a job list, right? It's very straightforward. 1 second. Sorry for that. But on the left side, you can see all those different Fieries showing up, right? So in my case here, I connected to 3 different Fieries. I have a Fiery XF, which I call Fiery Inkjet here. I have a Fiery Toner Cut Sheet one, which is the second one, and I have a Fiery High Speed one, which could be a Nozomi or Landa behind it. So as you can see, while it's technically very complex, from a job interface, it's very, very simple. But the key question is, those 3 Fieries I have, they're very different segments. They require very different functionalities, right? So how do we handle this? Basically, if you double-click on one of those jobs, oh, I have one more slide. That's great. You can see on the Fiery XF, I have the luxury to actually connect multiple printers to it. But when I double-click on a job, in my case here, I double-clicked on a job which is processed by a cut sheet Fiery. Since it's a cut sheet Fiery, my job properties will open. And here I can now learn everything about gang up, booklets, folding, stapling, all those things that me as an inkjet person, I have no understanding of. But basically, this gives you job-centric or segment-centric functionality that only the operator that works on a cut sheet device really cares about. If I do the same with an inkjet job, now what we call a job editor will open, and I get a significantly more visual, more display graphics focused kind of user interface. And I can do now visual layouting of my job. And obviously you can already see it on the left side. I can do step and repeat, tiling, all my color management setting, cut path, cut marks, all those sort of things that I as an inkjet operator care about. So this really allows us to cover both the cut sheet world and the display graphics world out of one user interface, because it's content sensitive and will give me the functionality that I require per job or Fiery. How does this look in real life? In real life, we see this all the time, right? We come in with an EFI device, which obviously will come with an Fiery, but there's a mixed environment out there, right? And again, all those products are great products. I will not say anything negative about them, but it's a mixed environment, right? Which means usually you have one operator that's operating this RIP, the other one the other, the third one the third. And while they might be able to get a job out of each of them, they're really specialized in one of them, which is obviously a problem if you want to cross-train and move operators around. So when the printer comes in with a Fiery, it can actually drive multiple printers, right? You can add output options to one particular RIB, and it will happily drive multiple. It can actually also drive cutting devices, both smaller rotor vinyl cutters, but also flatbed cutters like Sund, Kongsberg, etc. This can all be driven from one Fiery, but it actually could also be multiple Fieries, of course, depending on what performance you're looking for. Usually we see the print operator standing right there on the Fiery and looking at the user interface. What some people don't realize is this user interface is what we call Fiery Command Workstation, which is client-server. Meaning, of course, the print operator can operate it directly here at the workstation at the printer, but it could also be a prepress operator in prepress having another command workstation installed, and he can control that particular Fiery or multiple. And since it's Mac and Windows, it could obviously be installed on multiple Macs as well and giving prepress access to this. As a matter of fact, even the corner office could have it installed, because specifically with EFI ViewTech printers, we can actually provide information right in Fiery Command Workstation on ink usage, media usage, etc. So I can see if my print came out and what quality it got and what my cost was for that particular print. And last but not least, we have a very interesting cloud offering, which allows us to monitor all the equipment, give you some information about uptime, downtime, ink usage, media usage, how to compare different equipment to each other. And we call that EFI IQ. We will have a chance later to do more questions, because I'm sure there's questions about the Unified Print Room. But I mentioned I'm a color nerd by trade, so I will tell you a little bit about color. I think this one is fairly straightforward. Obviously, with our history as a proofing RIP, we are fully industry compliant. FOGRA, Grackle, Pantone, etc., etc. Ghent Workgroup is a special one close to our heart as well. So we are fully compliant, not only for proofing, but for all production as well, which gives you proofing grade, industry standard quality in production. I already mentioned Pantone. Obviously, we're fully certified in Pantone, Toyo, DSC, HKS, etc. But you can also create your spot colors yourself. I believe, since we're coming out of a proofing world, I believe in process color, we're better than the competition in production. In spot colors, we blow them away, right? I think especially when it comes to spot or brand colors, functionality is very, very high. You can create tints, 5%, 10%, etc., as many as you want to. You can curve it. You can do iteration. That's very important, right? We are fully industry standard compliant ICC solution, but we allow you to do iterations on top. So we can really marry both worlds, iteration and ICC, to give you the best possible reproduction. The software can create fully automatically a test chart with as many spot colors as you select to do these iterations. This test chart could actually be the full Pantone database if you decide to do so. So very sophisticated tools. But we also have very simple tools. We can print little hexagons where you can click on, oh, the right top one, which is a little bit more reddish. I like this one better, this kind of stuff. So we can do those manual iterations. Or we can allow you to print a swatch book, meaning you can simply print out the full Pantone database on your particular printer, and you can show that to your clients. Like, listen, this is exactly what I can print. Choose one, and I can ensure you that it will be 100% accurate. So multitude of tools around spot colors. We have a couple of innovations that we are able to provide, and I want to highlight some of them. One is the dynamic rendering intent. I usually always ask the question, if you have an Adobe RGB, what's the rendering intent you will use to print that on a CMYK device? 95% of the people tell me they will use perceptual. Why? Because we all learned this, I learned this, I believe in it. It's likely the best rendering intent. Why? Because perceptual means you're compressing the RGB into the CMYK space, which tends to be significantly smaller. You're sacrificing accurate color because you want to have a differentiation, a density differentiation of the pixels, and therefore you need to compress them in, and you need to compress each and every pixel. As a matter of fact, though, if you open your RGB image in Photoshop, and let's choose an extreme example, you shot an RGB picture of a gray cat in the night. While it's an Adobe RGB image, the pixels itself, they're not saturated at all. They would be 100% reproducible. So in that case, with this, not that attractive image that I shot, in that case, perceptual rendering intent is wrong, actually, because it will compress even though there's no need to compress, meaning the pixels that are inside of the color space, they will be overcompressed with no value. So in this case, a relative color metric would actually be the better rendering intent. So if I know what I'm doing, and if I have enough time, I can open each and every image in Photoshop and can make an individual decision, like while you're called Adobe RGB, the pixels itself are saturated or not, and therefore I will go perceptual or relative color metric. Obviously, not everyone has that skill, including myself, but specifically not everyone has that time to do that. And that's exactly what dynamic rendering intent does. It will fully automatically analyze each and every image, will compare it with the output color space, and will make a fully automated decision what rendering intent it should use in order to give the best pleasing and accurate color out for production. So a very nice way to reduce touch points and just make it very automated and give you the best possible output. Innovation number 2, purifying color. While it might be color management-wise 100% correct to push a little bit of cyan into yellow in production, we usually don't want that. So purify color can exactly do that, or reverse that, and can remove those pollutions or a little bit cyan out of yellow and keep it nice and clean. Another one with dynamic wedge. I mentioned before the industry standard compliant. So obviously we can, like a lot of other solutions, we can place a foreground strip. We can place an Idea Alliance ISO strip to verify my print output. So I can do that for proof, but I actually like it even more for production. If I'm working for Microsoft, for example, who's forcing every print provider to print to Grackle, I can place that ISO strip on my print. I can verify it, and I will get the sticker of approval. Yes, this print is within the Grackle specification or ISO specification, and my print buyer will happily pay me for this product once I ship it. If my print buyer does not force me to print to industry standard or put the label of approval to industry standard on the print, then to be honest, an industry standard strip is not that valuable. I mean, if we look at this slide here, let's assume the slide would be my print job. I have a lot of bluish, purplish blue in here. I have a little bit yellow and green in that light bulb, but that's about it. So if my industry standard has an 100% magenta patch on it, I don't care about that patch. It's not part of my print job. Why would I measure and verify it or stop the job if my 100% magenta is not correct, if it's not even on my print job? It doesn't matter to me. And that's where the dynamic wedge comes in. So we can place that additionally. It's not removing any functionality. So we can place that additionally. And what the dynamic wedge will do is it will analyze my print job now. So in my case here, it sees a lot of white. It sees some black for the font. It sees an EFI blue spot color, actually. So we'll take that spot color. It sees a couple of process colors on that light bulb. And it will custom build me a control strip, which I can now automatically place on my printout. And now I'm verifying what matters to me. I verify the actual image. And if it's good, I can start production. If it's bad, a small strip with 32 or maybe even 64 patches is not enough to create an ICC profile, but it's enough to fix this one particular job. So if I get bad measurements back, I can click the optimize button and it will fix that one particular job and I can start my production. So what I can do is before I start production, I do one job, I scale it down, I put the control strip on, I can measure it. First of all, visual control, did all the ripping work properly? Measurement, am I good to go? I run production, or am I not good enough? Then I click the optimize button, it will optimize it, and now I'm good enough to start production. So very powerful indeed for production. I touched on that already. We're able to do iterations. When we talk about color management, there's usually two trains of thought in the industry. There's the ICC guys, which are industry standard compliant, interchangeable ICC profile technology, right? And there were device link guys. And device link guys, very often they lock you to their media. But the value is that they allow you to do iterations, meaning you allow the software to measure itself back in, see how good or how bad did it perform, and do an iteration to improve yourself. And you keep doing that until you hit a perfect colorimetric match. We can give you both. We can give you the best out of both worlds. We're 100% ICC compliant, but we allow you to do iterations on top. We are basically doing that via an abstract ICC profile, meaning that the original ICC stays intact. We never drop it. We never change it. We put this correction table on top, which allows you to do those iterations. If due to whatever reason you want to start from scratch or you want to throw it away or whatever, the original ICC profile is still here and is still fully interchangeable. With the iterations, obviously, we're able to give you a very, very close colorimetric match, both for process and for spot or brand colors, without ever losing the ICC profile, which is quite nice. Fiery Intensify, and I will try to play this video. It will probably not look this great on the WebEx, but I will talk you through it. Fiery Intensify is, again, color innovation. Now we're no longer talking accurate color. We're talking pleasing color for production. We touched on rendering intents before. We have perceptual, relative colorimetric, absolute colorimetric, and saturation. No one is using saturation because it doesn't work. So we took the saturation intent and we re-engineered it, we redeveloped it. What we are able to do is we can give you additional pop and saturation to have really nice, pleasing, poppy color. And I hope you can see some in those examples, how the after has some richer yellows and richer reds and blues in this case. We can give you that without losing the skin tones and without losing the grays. Right? And again, this is for a production-focused feature. This will be done fully automatically to give you this more pleasing and saturated color. Basically, it almost looks like extending the gamut. You cannot change the gamut of a printer, really, but we're extending or pushing the gamut of each pixel or color of each pixel, which gives you that additional pop. That is Fiery Intensify. Intensify, like all the color features that I mentioned so far, they're free of charge. They're simply part of this lowest total cost of ownership maintenance offering that we have, where we continuously provide updates with value-add functionality that's available for you. Some of those functions require recalculation of your profile, but not a reprint, just FYI. Ink saving. Not all of the ink saving is free of charge, but it will tell you exactly which is included and which has a fee to it. When we provide ink saving, we really need to talk about a technology stack. It's 3 different technologies that work together smoothly and give you more ink saving than you can achieve with other solutions. Number 1 is variable light ink endpoint. Number 2 is GCR. Number 3 is smart ink saving. Sounds complicated. It's actually fairly straightforward. I will explain to you all 3 of them. So let's start with the printer calibration. This is standard functionality. There's no charge to this. This is, again, just part of the continuous stream of value-add functionality that we provide with our upgrades as part of the maintenance offering. What we call variable light ink endpoint is, let's look at our graphs, right, the other way. The one that says today, it actually should not say today, it should say in the past. What we were able to do in the past, let's assume this is cyan here for a second. So you have a dark cyan coming up at around 25%. It starts coming in and going up to 100%. Light cyan obviously starts already in highlight, starts at 0%. It will come in fairly aggressive because it's light cyan. It will still look nice and smooth, but then it starts fading slowly on. The whole idea about light cyan is that if you want to provide, or the printer manufacturer wants to provide you with nice and smooth highlights, nice and clean pastels, etc. Then as operator, you were able to reduce the light cyan under 100% solid cyan down to 0. So this is the old functionality. The new functionality, and you can see that on the right graph, is that now not only can we remove it or reduce it to 0 under 100, we can actually reduce it to 0 under 90, maybe 0 under 80, maybe even 0 under 70. Because in all reality, under a lot of dark cyan, 70, 80, 90%, you will not see the light cyan anymore. So allowing you to reduce this or go to 0 even earlier allows us to significantly reduce the ink usage without any visual impact, because you can't see it under that anyway. And you notice that the light cyan and the highlights is still as heavy as it was before, so you still get your smooth and clean highlights, pastels, etc. So this is the variable light ink endpoint, standard functionality in Fiery XF 7.2 and higher. Obviously only works if you have light inks in your printer. Step 2 and 3, this is now a chargeable functionality, and they're both combined into one setting. So while it's from a technology standpoint fairly complicated, from a user interface standpoint, it's super straightforward. You can see the screenshot here. You can see that you are able to select, it's at the moment it's selected high, but you can select low, medium, and high, and we do all the functionality, all the settings in the background. So it's very easy to use. You do that right at the profiling step, and then your profile contains this ink saving. But you need the license on your server in order to run that profile as well. This ink saving setting is combined out of two functionalities. One is strong GCR setting. GCR is in the industry since forever. It's called gray component replacement, or it stands for gray component replacement. But this basically means the easiest example is always the 40, 30, 30. So 40 cyan, 30 magenta, 30 yellow. That's a nice gray. It's built by CMY. I might as well remove that CMY completely and push in black. I will get the exact same visual result, but significantly less ink usage. If I do this under grays, that would be under color removal. If I do this also for colors, so in my, I'm not wearing anything blue. In the case of this blue font on this slide, this might have some parts of CMY in it, even though it's not gray. I can remove that part and push in black, and that's then called GCR, gray component replacement. Almost all vendors in the industry use this gray component replacement. We use the same or something similar. What is unique to us is we're putting EFI Smart Ink Savings on top, and that is technology that we developed 8 years ago for the ceramic space, because there was no CMY. They're not using process colors at all. They only use spot colors, and we had to develop some ink saving technology itself, and we're using that to put that in here as well, and that gives us the cutting edge to provide a little bit more ink saving at no visual degrade to our customers. So combined, this gives you more ink saving at the same quality. We believe we can do ink savings at a very high level, so high ink reduction, but no introduction of grayness, no 5 o'clock shadows, no grainy highlights, etc. And it will not cut your gamut either. Talking about the amount of ink that can be saved is always impossible to do because it's so much image dependent, right? And have a couple of examples here. Honestly speaking, they're very high from a percentage reduction standpoint. I'm usually a little bit more careful. End of the day, the only way to predict what you're going to save is if you give us some of the images, and we are more than happy to run them. In those particular images, those 3 here, we saved 34% on those images. On those here, we even saved 64% of ink, because obviously they contain a lot more gray component. Significant savings, to say the least. If you want to know more about either the color technology or about the unified print room, fiery.efi.com/unified print room. And with that, oh, sorry for that, we will go to Q&A.
First of all, I think it was a fantastic presentation. Thank you very much, Chris.
More than welcome.
What do you think, Jean? Jean, you don't have any sound. You just need to click the little unmute button.
I was just saying, it's very educational. So I don't know if anyone else has any questions, but I've got quite a few, so I'm quite intrigued.
Shoot.
So just on an ink saving side, I mean, that's the big thing with inkjets. I mean, the ink costs more than oil. It's always a big thing. So we should phone you automatically as my inkjet press is installed. We should get you in there, and because you were talking about 34% and 64% ink savings. No offense, but that's huge. So to make that kind of statement, I mean, I should, before I do anything, I should actually get the EFI team in there and it sets us up so that I could get the best out of this press from an and cost saving when it comes to ink, correct?
Yes, but again, I mean, I need to be super careful with the ink saving statement. I think our marketing literature says somewhere of under 14% or reducing it by 14%. The samples that I showed 100% real though. So it's so much image dependent. I mean, if I'm printing black and white business cards, we're going to save you 0, right? If I'm printing a lot of grayscale content, the saving is going to be huge. So again, yeah, first of all, I mean, you can always test it. We provide our certified partners with what we call NFR codes, not for resale codes. They can set this up for you. You can try it, no risk for you at all. If you don't have a printer yet, if you don't want to do a profile, etc., send us a couple of images, and then we can send them through some of our standard profiles, and we can tell you exactly, hey, on this machine, this resolution, this print node, you would have saved exactly amount of X.
And that leads to the question I had, because everything I have always, like you've been very interested in the colors. I have unfortunately not the skills that you have, obviously. So again, maybe a stupid question, but Chris, obviously, when you talk about zero loss visual quality, and when you talk about also the color savings, it is of course very device dependent. But how device dependent is it when the day is over? I mean, is it like, let's say that if you have one press, then it's like this, or is it more like average on all machines, or how do you see that?
Very good question as well. So first of all, when we do the light, medium, heavy, I think that's how we call them in the UI. The heavy is pushing the envelope, right? I mean, I would, lights out operation, not checking anything. I would go light, medium all day long. The heavy I probably want to take a look at. And that's done on purpose, right? Because we can do the sliders in the software however we choose to. And you want to set them in a way that, not the first person that's calling you, hey, can we do a little bit more, right? So you push the envelope there a little bit. Very much machine dependent. In my past, we have done it for newspaper, for example. So if you have a low quality machine, and nothing against newspapers, but if you have a lower quality machine, ink saving still works beautiful, but you want to watch out a couple of things. So first of all, if a machine doesn't have light inks, then that first technology step I mentioned is out the window. So ink saving will be lower to begin with. And then the second is the graininess of black. If your black dots are fairly big, then obviously you cannot start as early in the highlights to use it. You really need to watch out your skin tones as well. I always keep telling that little story. I mean, obviously, I'm not American. I'm from Germany. I lived for a while in the US, and one of my first installs, I was in that newspaper, and we're talking ink savings and and they kept talking about the 5 o'clock shadow on the cheerleaders, and I mean, I had to Google it and ask some colleagues, and the next day I'm like, I understand what you're talking about. Yes, we started the black a little bit too early. We see a little bit of the black graininess. And therefore, the cheerleaders have a little 5 o'clock shadow that I start having here. So that's what makes it very machine dependent. The light ink and the dot size of the black. If the black gets too heavy, then you want to start later. But also, if you have machines with high fluctuation, and we've seen that in offset quite a bit, you make them more stable. Because if I have a 3-color gray, it's going to shift all over the place. And it's going to be mid-America as well. If I print that with black, it's going to be nice and stable.
I just have a follow-up question on that one, because I mean, I'm not trying to get you to reveal any of your patents, but I was just wondering how much of this is down to also the screening methods. Because I mean, when I was at Label Expo last time, I met the people from Hamilton, and I mean, the ink savings they introduce is also because they introduce new types of screening methods. Can you tell a little bit about how you actually achieve some of the results? Well,
I can tell you that there's different ways, and we do have some screening technology inside the printer, both screening but also ink technology, right? Because the more pigments you have in ink, the faster you achieve a gamut with smaller ink thickness. So there's a lot of technology pieces that can provide a very good total cost of ownership. The technology that I just shared, so the ink savings in Fiery XF, is on top of that. So this is before the screening hits or independent of the screening. So I can use this with any machine independent of the screening. But if I combine it with a machine that's very ink effective anyway, obviously the saving is even nicer.
Perfect. Do you have any questions?
You were saying the intelligent dynamic color and the interactive color optimization tools. Are those optional extras, or is that come as standard with your package?
The iteration of color?
Yes. You mentioned the intelligent and dynamic color. Is that a standard tool that comes with?
Gotcha. Very good question as well. So I mentioned a couple of different functionalities. Most of them are part of the standard tool. So the dynamic rendering intent, the purify of color, the intensify, all those are part of the standard package, always included. They were rolled out as part of maintenance, free of charge, etc. The dynamic wedge is part of what we call the color verifier option. I mean, that's the option to begin with to place a control strip. So I guess the dynamic wedge itself is included as well, but in that particular option, because that's the core option. And that option is part of what we call the proofing bundle, for example. And then the iterations on spot colors, standard functionality, because spot colors are always included. Iterations on the color profile, that's where you need our color profiler option, which is to create color profiles and start editing and iterating them. Very good question. Thank you.
I have another one before you go in. I mean, I think we ping pong fine here, Gene. Chris, I can't help think about. Nah, you're good. I can't help think about, because I think maybe that extends to some of the questions I asked you when we met in Denmark, and people cannot know unless they see that episode again. But I can't help think about that. If you look at obviously, there's a lot of technology that goes, I mean, beyond the hood of the software that people don't understand and don't need to understand. But I was just thinking that when you sell software this complex, who is actually the decision maker in actually utilizing this software? Because I mean, there is a tendency in this industry that you have lower educated operators on the presses. You may also have a more automated workflow in general, and you may even have a kind of stressful situation from the salespeople that they need things out fast, and maybe that reduces the labor intensity of actually understanding the technology that you offer.
Very good question indeed. So I came over from a proofing background, right? I spent 10 years in the proofing world in North America, and it's standard to charge 50%, if not 100% of the printer price for your rep. And it's very complicated, and the customer will spend multiple trade show visits to figure out which rep he wants to choose. And in production, we are a fraction of a printer price. The operator is not interested. He's going to take whatever comes with the printer and then run some problems after, right? So it's
you'll be there, I can hear.
Yeah, it's kind of mind-boggling. So what we see is, first of all, the first decision is what comes with the printer, right? So obviously we try to partner with printer manufacturers to show them the value of our system in order, or the reseller, as a matter of fact, to ensure that they can provide the proper solution for what customers' needs. Very often, there's no proactive decision on the buyer side of things. It's like, well, I really want to look at the rep. They look mostly at the printer hardware. So it's our job to educate our partners. So we have a very extensive certification program to train them, etc.
So does that mean that I mean, correct me if I'm wrong, but I think that when I worked for Xerox 20 years ago, that the fiery rips that was, for example, with the DC250 at that time, a long time ago, you can hear, that it was actually a limited edition of a fiery. Are you saying that when people get a fiery rip today, you basically have the same level on all servers in order to give that opportunities for the printers to be educated and actually take further actions? And that might be also the reason why you have the paid for upgrades in ink savings and other
correct
areas.
On the Fiery XF side, we always today provide full functionality with all rep sales. Yes.
Fantastic.
So what I wanted to mention, so one side is the educating our partners to ensure that the proper solution is sold. The other is then really aftermarket, because you kind of get what you get with the printer, and then after a while you run into this, oh, holy cow, I have this print room and I have 5 different solutions, and this is becoming a headache for me. And that's where this unified print room comes in. And obviously we offer some trade-in offers, because then you already have invested in one thing, and then but that works out nicely as well.
I think this is a wonderful session, and I think it was wonderful to learn, and I wish I could spend more time with you. This is, we're still in public, so I just want to let you know that if you ever would like to have an Inky session where we go in details with this, free of charge. If we're going to meet, you have to pay for the flight tickets, but if you can do it remotely, we don't need to. But I would really like to dig into this. I think it's a very important subject to discuss, and I think it's very important to, as you said, you have very good learning skills and programs on learning.efi.com. But I still think that Inky also can help you a little bit on this one.
Absolutely. I love your work, and that's why I was here, or I am here. So absolutely.
Perfect. Well, I will just play the little EFI video we did, and then thank you very much, Chris, and also thank to the audience. Please, everybody, join us for the next session, which is with the CRM agency, where we're going to talk about how they are using a Marvel cartoonist and LinkedIn to make customers into superheroes. I think that's a wonderful subject, isn't it? So once again, thank you, Chris, and I hope to see you and talk to you soon.
Perfect.
Thank you.